And welcome back to Patience is a Virtue, the YouTube channel devoted to finding value in future sports wagering. I'm your host, Andrew, and on today's episode, we're going to take a look at the odds to win the 2025 WNBA Championship. Taking a look at the current sports books, here are the best prices that I was able to find on Saturday, May 24th. We have the New York Liberty leading the market at plus 225. That's at DraftKings. Minnesota Lynx at plus 340, also at DraftKings. Indiana Fever plus 350. That can be at FanDuel or MGM, same price. The Las Vegas Aces are plus 450 at FanDuel. Then we're going to take a big jump. Next is going to be the Phoenix Mercury. They're at plus 1,800 at FanDuel. And finally, we have the Seattle Storm plus 3,000 at DraftKings. Everybody else is below that and honestly don't really have much of a shot. So I wouldn't pay attention to any team below the Seattle Storm. So the two teams that I really want to focus on and the ones that I think you might want to take a look at getting tickets on are the New York Liberty and the Minnesota Lynx, the two teams who are leading the market. Currently, so far, the New York Liberty are 3-0. They just beat the Indiana Fever in Indianapolis today, and Minnesota are 4-0. Right, so they're both undefeated. These are the two teams that played for the championship last year, with New York winning in 5 games, 3-2, and really they've been the two best teams so far. I think that at this current stage, these are the teams that you want to start a portfolio. If you want to build something, build a portfolio on who you want to see win the championship and have a good position. I think you definitely want to start with New York. That's a ticket you absolutely need to have because I have a hard time seeing them not making at least the Final Four and probably the championship round. They are good enough to be able to do that. And if you want to hedge at that point, you can, but a ticket on New York should be able to at least get you there. Minnesota is also a great team. They've got a fantastic defense, and they're led by Nafisa Collier. She's currently the leading scorer in the WNBA. And a lot of people like to say that she's on a revenge tour this year because the Lynx, they lost the championship last year, and you could argue that maybe they should have. Controversy at the very end of Game 5. So a lot of people think that Minnesota is really out to prove a point this year, and so far they've been doing so. They've taken care of all the business that they need to, and they've been led by Collier. So really these two teams are very, very strong. Both teams are in the top 3 in scoring, and they're basically dominating the WNBA so far, even though we are very early on. Most teams have played 3 to 4 games at this point. But I think you definitely want to start getting tickets on these teams. And the best thing or the worst thing that's going to happen is that they're just going to start getting shorter and shorter in terms of their odds. So you really need to start stacking up tickets if you really want to build a good portfolio. So I would definitely go with the New York Liberty if that's one that you want to have. I think having Minnesota in there is also a good option. I have tickets on both these two teams so far. The Indiana Fever, they do have a very good offense and they have a lot of new players. So they are kind of learning to work together. But right now they're 2-2. Their price is probably not going to get too much longer because they are a very popular team. And I would guess that they only really have anywhere to go but up and start pushing against the top 2 teams for one of those highest positions. The Fever did take the Liberty, they lost to the Liberty by only 2 today and home. And I think they had a good chance of actually winning that game. So they are one of the best teams in the league. Right now, I'm not really seeing it, but the Fever price has nowhere to go but to shorten up, meaning the odds are going to get worse in your favor. Right, they'll shorten down to the 300s and then the 200s. So you make less money if you're making tickets on them. So if you do like the Fever and you do think they'll be there in the end, you could definitely consider a ticket on the Fever. Fourth team would be the Aces. Now, I'm not convinced about the Aces and becoming less and less so with each game they play. Obviously, you have Asia Wilson. She is still probably the best player in the league, but the team is just not the same that was so dominant in the years past. And I'm not quite certain that they're a real contender for the title. I do expect them to make the playoffs. I think they'll probably be the maybe 4 or 5 seed, meaning they would go up against New York. So that could be a little bit of a scary match for the Liberty in possibly the semifinals. But ultimately, I just don't see the Aces being able to pull it out. So I don't have a ticket on the Aces. I'll keep an eye on them, but I'm not planning on adding them to my portfolio currently. If you want to take longer shots, you do have the Mercury and you do have the Seattle Storm, who are great prices right now. And it doesn't hurt to throw a few bucks on them just because then you're going to get a lot of value out of that. I'm not a big fan of value tickets that don't have a whole lot of a chance of cashing, which is what I think these two are. getting a great COV is fantastic, but if it doesn't cash anything, it doesn't really mean much of anything at all. At least that's my personal opinion. So you hear a lot of people talking about having great COV on tickets. If they don't have much of a chance to cash, that doesn't really do a whole lot for you. So I'm not going to take tickets on either the Mercury or the Storm, but it is something to consider if you want a longer price of somebody who should probably make the playoffs. I think both these two teams have a very good chance of making the playoffs in some position. They'll probably face a tough first round game against either it could be New York, it could be Minnesota, could be Indiana, could even be Las Vegas. And decent chance that they would lose in that first round, or at the very least, probably lose in the semifinals to one of the toughest teams. But it doesn't hurt to have those tickets as long as you're going for a very low stake. I wouldn't put too much in them. So, really, for me right now, I think taking tickets on the Liberty is definitely the way to go. If you want to add in the Minnesota Lynx, I'm not going to talk you out against that. I think having both those teams is a good option. Again, I have tickets on both of them at this point. I'm going to hold off a little bit on the Fever. This is possibly a good time to get them because, again, I think their price can only really shorten and get worse on you. So this is going to be one of the best prices that you're probably going to get, barring any kind of injury. But I'm just not convinced right now that they would be able to actually win a series against either New York or Minnesota. And if you already have those tickets on the Liberty or the Lynx, if you are getting into the semifinals or the finals and they are playing the Liberty or possibly the Aces, either Indiana and Las Vegas, they're both likely going to be the underdogs in that situation. So if you wanted to, you really could just hedge at that point without having the tickets. You're not going to make as much of a profit. You won't have as much of a hedge position as buying now. But I do think that is an option if you don't want to invest in either Indiana or Las Vegas at this current state. I think you're perfectly okay doing that. So we're taking a look at tickets for the Liberty. We're taking a look at tickets for the Lynx. I also want to touch base really quickly about the bets that I've given off recently on the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference in the NBA playoffs. So in the Eastern Conference, I talked about the Pacers and the Knicks going 6 or 7 games. Right now, I'm not very confident in going 7 games, but I do think 6 games is a possibility. I can definitely see New York getting one of two in Indianapolis starting tomorrow on Sunday, with the Pacers probably winning the second one. Don't know how that's going to work out. Knicks might come in and they might get game 3 because they know they really need it. Pacers end up getting game 4, kind of like what happened in their series against Cleveland. Then it goes back to New York for game 5. I can see the Knicks holding serve there and pushing it to Indianapolis for game 6, but then having the Pacers close out in game 6. So if you have a ticket on both of those, I think you're still okay. If you only picked 7 games, you really probably need to start looking to hedge. Um, so I would definitely just keep that in mind. I don't think it's going to make 7 games at this point. You never know. Crazier things are happening. Nobody expected the Pacers to win the first 2 games in New York. So it could certainly switch back and maybe New York takes both games in Indianapolis. But I would say if you have a ticket on 6 games or less, and we gave out the over 5.5 games. So in this case, you do have a ticket on at least 6 games. I think right now you are okay, and you can look to possibly hedge in game 5 if needed. But if you went for specifically game 6 and or game 7, if you're looking at game 7, probably want to start looking to figure out some sort of hedge angle on that series because it looks like the Pacers have a good chance of winning in less than 7 games. In the Western Conference, we talked about both Oklahoma City being up 2-1 after 3 games and Minnesota being up 2-1 after 3 games. Obviously, the Minnesota ticket is now dead because Oklahoma City has won the first 2. But if you do hold that Oklahoma City 2-1 ticket, you can take a look at hedging as well. Now, I was kind of surprised. If you look at the odds, Oklahoma City is actually favored to win this game. So you're not getting quite as good of odds as you might expect. I do think it is very possible that Minnesota will be able to win game 3. They're down 0-2. This is the finals. They're at home. I really can see them putting forth a great effort to try and win this game. And this could be a good live betting opportunity as well. I would expect Minnesota to come out very strong. They might be leading after the first quarter, leading at halftime. And then at that point, perhaps you take Oklahoma City to ultimately win the game. You might be getting plus money at that point. That will help you to, obviously you can cover your bet on that end if Oklahoma City would then ultimately go 3-0. So if you have an Oklahoma City 2-1 ticket, it's not quite dead yet. I really think it's sort of a toss up at this point. I would be very mindful about looking for a hedge opportunity. If you didn't bet too much, you might just want to let it ride. But I think it is very possible that that you do need to look to hedge in this situation. I did expect the first two games to be a little bit closer than what they were, but Oklahoma City is showing that they are definitely the stronger team. I do think that they are going to ultimately go to the NBA Finals out of the Western Conference. So another way that you could look to indirectly hedge, again, this is not a real hedge, but it's an indirect hedge. Look for Oklahoma City to win the NBA championship. That's going to assume that they're going to make it past, and then if you need to, you can hedge in the finals. I do think Oklahoma City are probably going to go to the finals, so that is another way that you can think about doing sort of a hedge on this position. Not a direct hedge, but looking at it that way. And that's going to do it for this episode of Patience is a Virtue. Always keep in mind to bet responsibly, never bet more than you can afford to lose, and remember, patience is a virtue.